In the studio with us this morning, David Janusek, Councilman Peter Broad, and Malcolm Polley from downtown Indiana. Gentlemen, good morning to all of you.
Good morning.
Morning.
David, let's just have you come in this morning and introduce why these gentlemen are joining us today as we talk about the Business Improvement District and what happens next.
Sure. Absolutely, Todd. Let me kind of get the whole thing started. Today, Malcolm Polley is the president of our board at downtown Indiana, and Peter Broad is the president of council. So we've got a couple of presidents here with me and you to kind of talk a little bit about the outcome. Obviously, you guys had reported yesterday with the outcome of the IDIA that was up for vote by the property owners within the proposed new plan on Tuesday night. So it's kind of, a lot of questions have been asked. So what now? So the best way to answer those questions is take it right to the source. I think we've got, with the cooperative agreement with the borough, I'm going to kind of punt it over to these two presidents, and we can go from there, Todd.
All right. Do we need to play Hail to the Chief for either of you, or are we good?
No, we're good.
Malcolm, we'll begin with you. Downtown Indiana, of course, pursuing the Business Improvement District bid 5 years ago, 6 years ago, actually, and it came to be. And we went through the entire life of that first bid, and now the new one, which was termed the IDIA, which basically was along those same lines. So as David said, what next for downtown Indiana in relation to this particular effort?
Well, I guess things will continue as they have been. My goal as I became president at the beginning of this year was to make sure downtown, downtown Indiana remained a viable entity to support the constituents for downtown, which is the business owners, the customers that walk the streets, the shop owners, etc. That still is the intent. Downtown Indiana has muddled through during the course of the year. We've been able to meet our obligations, and I think that we've pulled our expenses down to the bare minimum. We're not going to be able to do a whole lot extra because we don't have necessarily a lot of funds to deal with, but I think we can continue to muddle through in 2018. It's going to be difficult, and we're going to need the help of a lot of different people to try and maintain. And the borough has been more than helpful over this last year in helping us continue ourselves.
Councilman Peter Broad, as the president of council, of course, you're more than interested in
Yes.
what downtown Indiana was doing with this particular process, and it does have great ramifications for Indiana Borough.
It does indeed. We've enjoyed the partnership we've had with downtown Indiana and the Business Improvement District for the last 5 years or more. There were some rocky moments, but if anyone stands on Philadelphia Street and looks and sees what a beautiful downtown we have, we couldn't have done that without downtown Indiana. The Business Improvement District made them eligible for the grants that paid for some of that very expensive work that was done there. They have taken off of our shoulders the burden of maintaining the appearance of the Central Business District, which makes the town much more enjoyable for all of us who live here and visitors who come in from the outside as well. I do want to point out one thing that was inaccurate in the reporting on that vote on Tuesday night. Because of the way the vote was set up, it seemed as though there was an overwhelming majority that voted no. In fact, a majority voted yes. It was just more than 40% that voted no, and that's what was required to defeat it.
Right.
A yes vote did not require an actual ballot. Some people turned those in, 16, I think it was reported.
Yeah.
But I think most people in Indiana still appreciate the efforts that downtown Indiana makes on our behalf. I had said somewhat intemperately at the end of that when Josh thrust his recording device in my face that we were looking at maybe having to raise taxes to pick up the slack. I don't think that's going to happen, but we may find ourselves having to more strictly enforce our ordinances, which make property owners responsible for the maintenance of the sidewalks, the street trees in front of their property.
Right.
Gentlemen, as we consider what Councilman Broad just said about being eligible for certain funding streams because of the bid that was in place, does that then carry forward into this next period, however long it might be, and Indiana will potentially lose out on future funding because of the lack of having a business improvement district plan in place?
It's quite possible. One of the things that we need to do, and was going to be part of the process as the idea, had the idea been authorized, is reentering the Main Street program. And it has been pointed out by DCED, during this process, you are far more likely to get funding if you are a member of both the Main Street program and have a business improvement district than you would if you tried to do one by itself. There will still be funding available if we get back into Main Street program. There's a lot of cost involved in that. And as I said, we don't necessarily have the funding to put some of that together, but we'll try.
From a council standpoint, Councilman Broad, you were talking about the numbers of services that will now have to be taken over, that burden being cast upon the property owners themselves. Have you gotten a reaction from anybody who has said that in the business district that this is going to negatively affect the way that we're able to do business?
I haven't heard anything yet, but it's early days.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. Dave?
One of the other points I think that I'd like to make is that even when we were kind of going through the idea, if you read the plan, and you could still look at it, I mean, it's pretty comprehensive. Keep in mind that, we talk a lot about the physical maintenance of the downtown, but I think we tend to forget sometime that the staff also does a lot of the marketing, does most of the marketing for downtown as well as most of the events. And I think, as Malcolm said, I think we're good for 2017, but we're going to have to take a hard look. Where do the funds come to continue to do a lot of the professional marketing and some of the events that we've done in the past?
Well, some of those events, such as the Northern Appalachian Folk Festival, other big events, are they endangered by the fact that this is no longer a part of the mix?
2017, as Malcolm said, I think we're pretty soluble to get through this year. But next year, I think we've got to take a hard look at everything. Has to turn a profit and has to turn a considerable profit to continue to be regionally viable events, not just local events.
Malcolm, let's talk with you a little bit more about what Downtown Indiana is and what it does as a business entity representative. Right. Everybody falls under that umbrella, and there are certain things that you were able to do before under a bid that you're not able to do now. But what are the things that you are still able to do? Because I don't want people to have the impression that because the bid goes away, Downtown Indiana does. Right.
So we are still able to do some of the events that we've been doing. So we have coming up Oktoberfest in another week or so. Yeah. We have the Wine Walk that's coming up in late October. Yep. We also have the It's a Wonderful Life Festival that's coming up in cooperation with the Donnelly family, and the Light Up Night in November, and the festival takes place through most of the Christmas season. That should bring a lot of people into downtown, and that's really our focus, is to try and bring people downtown. In 2018, we may have to scale some of that back.
Is there the possibility that this bid having failed, the IDIA having failed, that in the near future, or must there be a period of time before another effort is made?
I don't know that we have to wait a period of time before another effort is made. From a practical standpoint, it may be that people have to see physically what the bid and what the idea did in order to appreciate just what we've missed in this particular period of time. So it may be next year or some later date before we try and resurrect this thing, because I don't know that there is an appreciation by some people within the IDEA or the bid district as to what exactly it was that was done.
And those marketing efforts, Councilman Broad, you can address this from an Indiana Borough perspective. We're talking about it in terms of businesses that come in and are benefited, but the entire town and the region benefits from what happens in downtown Indiana.
Absolutely. That's one of the things that makes Indiana such a wonderful place to be, is there's always something happening downtown, and it brings in people from outside, but it brings our residents out into the streets with things to happen, things to do, not every week, but
Right.
some frequency, enough that it's worthwhile to us. It also, of course, on a strictly fiscal point of view, it brings money so the businesses can thrive, which means that we have people paying for the services that we have to provide.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of moments left with our guests this morning, Malcolm Polley, Peter Broad, David Janusek. Malcolm, I thought you were going to say something there. All right, let's call Dave Janusek in for a couple of moments here. Dave, as the Executive Director of Downtown Indiana, you are charged with steering the ship a little bit here. What's the next direction in which you go?
I think the next direction, I think it's pretty apparent that we will continue with our partners. Those partners include our board, our volunteers, the borough. We've made great strides with the university. That's a whole other population that brings a vibrancy and income to the area. We'll continue to keep the ship. We may only have one mast left, but we'll keep that sail full bore and try to go forward. I mean, it's not a point where we're going to pack up the bags and call it a day. I think everyone that's committed to the downtown with those partners are very committed. And as Malcolm said, we'll continue to go forward however that may be.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming in to visit with us today. We appreciate it very, very much.
Thank you.
It is Indiana in the Morning, presented as always by First Commonwealth Bank here on WCCS at AM 1160 and FM 101.1.